So we're back again. We have not done a Western comics adaptation in a while. I think the
Dinner,
last one we
dinner,
did
dinner, 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 Batman.
I think the last one we did was Samurai Deadpool. It might have been I think that's the only one we've done so far. We have plans to do a few more. I have volumes for a few more, but we've done that one. Um, but stepping away from Marvel, we've actually got Batman, The Wayne Family Adventures, Volume 1. So this is original DC story published on Webtoon. I do believe that the imprint is also by Webtoon, so Webtoon themselves publishes this as part of their Webtoon Unscrolled. That's what they call it. It's one of a few series I have by them. And it's got an author and an artist, CRC Payne and Starbite. Now, this is ongoing. So this is not completed. It started in 2021. There's 3 seasons so far. Like 120 something episodes, 100 and something episodes. But this one covers the first 25 episodes of the series. And originally, we were actually going to be reading the first 4 volumes, which consisted of like the first 75 chapters ish of the series. But I suppose that's something that we should get into now.
Yeah.
Because you're the reason, Nick Nack.
The series was shit. No, no, no. I actually, my feelings in the series are a bit complicated because I think it's not the series' fault that I didn't get into this as much as I thought I would. It's entirely the fact that it's not that I don't like Batman. It's that I am not engrossed in the Batman sort of like
Extended
mythos,
universe.
like the extended cast of Batman. So like I've read like one or two comic runs of Batman, like one or two of like the like really big stories. I've watched I was as a child I watched a few like episodes of the show and I've seen almost all of the modern Batman movies, but
Whereas
that
here,
doesn't necessarily bring in most of the cast of this series.
yeah, so basically the characters that you likely wouldn't have done a whole amount of a large amount of coverage on are what is it? Probably Batwoman, yeah. Cassandra Cain.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
No Cassandra
Well,
King.
Batgirl, Cassandra Cain. And then Signal. Spoiler Orphan.
Which one's Spoiler Orphan?
Purple blonde hair. Purple outfit, blonde hair.
Yeah. The ones I know are the characters that everybody knows at this point.
The original 4 Robins and the
Bruce, Tim, Dick, uh,
Jason
Damian, Jason,
and
and
the original
Baz.
Batgirl, yeah,
Yeah.
who's now Oracle.
In this series, it's interesting. I don't know when
Yeah.
the series started, but she hasn't been Oracle for a minute in the comics, to my understanding.
This started in 2021, like I said.
Yeah. So
Um,
I think, like, as far as how this series is
well,
composed, I think that's a good way of mixing up the cast a bit.
she stays Oracle in this series because Batgirl is taken over by a different character. Remember, because we have
Yeah.
both Cassandra Cain and Stephanie Brown.
Like,
Yeah.
I get why they made that decision because I do think it works for what they're going for with this series, and they do need to vary up the cast and their superhero identities somewhat here because otherwise it's Robin, 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 Robin,
Well,
Batgirl, Batgirl, Batwoman.
and I think what you don't see in this volume, right? Because I actually went through and I read all 4 of these last night just to double check. In the next 3 volumes, they bring in like 15 more Batman extended universe characters. So you've got Lucius Fox, Luke Fox, the other Kane, who was Batwoman, right? She comes it back in as like a main character. And then Bertinelli, and then there's like some discussion of like each of the characters like other friends and teams, but they do actually show up semi regularly. So we see like Roy Harper and Barry Allen's Flash, and Superman and Green Lantern and Wonder Woman show up later and so on. So it is centered around the Bat Fam, right? Canonically, that's we've titled them the Bat Fam in the fandom. But it is bringing in all of their
I
peripheries.
did flip through some of the other books. Like I saw like Superman shows up, and then
Yep.
obviously like Harley Quinn is a member of the Batman cast,
Yep.
makes an
And
appearance in the show.
Poison Ivy shows up as well. As far as I've read forward, we haven't really seen Joker himself. We've seen
Well,
references, but we haven't seen Joker himself.
having straight up villains and not just anti-heroes would probably go against what the series is going for. Outside of like
Yeah,
maybe at one point they could have like one cut, like one single, like one-off thing with them. But
because that's one of the big things about this series, because it's the Wayne family adventures. It does not focus on crime fighting at all. Like we hear mentions of, they're like, oh, tonight somebody's got to take down Condiment King, but the what it focuses on in the story when that happens is the children being like, oh, I don't want to fight him, my suit smelled like mustard for 3 fucking weeks, let's play like a game to figure out who doesn't have to fight him, you know? So it's less about fighting and foiling the villains and more about the familial interactions of this group of characters who, in this comic, have been posed to all exist together at the same time in the same family unit, with all of their stories somehow meshing and merging in a way that works for this particular universe, which means that this is non-canon to everything else in the Batfam universe and DC. Like this cannot be canon to any part
a
of
lot
the
of these
Batfam.
characters were written out or dead by the time other characters in this universe came along.
Exactly.
So I think this reminds me, like this to me feels like if I dropped like say the channel and like Fate, like cooking, dropped everyone into like cooking with the Emiya household without showing you anything Fate previously, or like only the original Fate Stay Night anime or something like that, where it's like there might be scenes that you get, scenes that are cute either from your mythological knowledge or from your knowledge of like the one show I showed you, but you so much would be lost on you, it wouldn't as a whole be that interesting. And I think that's what's happening to me here. Is there are scenes in like vignettes that I actually do like. You're like Damian Wayne and Talia al Ghul, there, that entire little vignette was actually really like, I actually like that one because I know Damian Wayne a little bit more than say Signal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, I'm actually quite deeply ensconced within the Batman fandom. And so for me, I know pretty much, well, when I started reading this, because I started reading this when it first started coming out in 2021. And at the time when I picked it up, I actually did not know Signal or Orphan or Spoiler or Black Bat like as characters. I did not know that Batgirl had become Oracle in any continuity. But this got me to go and read a bunch of the back issues because one of the things it does is at the end of the first volume, and this was included, I think, in some like parts of the webtoon publication, is it actually gives you a little like character by character. If you want more of this character matching and then like multiple different vibes, here's the series you should read and which volumes that you should focus on. Right. So it gives you a little cheat guide as to like if you don't know a character and you want to go like look at their actual comic run, here's their actual comic run, you know, or like one of their comic runs, because some of these characters have far more comic runs than others. Like Signal is a relatively new character to the universe, as opposed to like Nightwing, you know, where so you Nightwing, you've got a ton of choices. With Signal, you have significantly less. You know what I mean? And then also, this is one part of DC's extended Webtoon universe. So, as far as I'm aware, I think there are 3 series on Webtoon that fit into this same universe. Not different universes, same universe. One is Red Hood and the Outlaws, which is actually referenced in a later volume of this, and the other one is shown in a preview at the end. It's called Vixen, and then it they have a crossover episode in like volume 3 or 4. And so those 3 shows do canonically take place in this same Batfam universe. So it's like the DC webtoon universe essentially. But yeah, so there is kind of other stuff here that does fit into continuity, but it's not part of the main comics run. But it does tell you what to go read from the main comics run by character, which is nice of them. Because I also, otherwise, I would have been very lost about some of the characters when I first started reading it. Now I'm not, you know, now I've gone and I've read comic runs and looked into the backstories of these characters, and I already knew a lot about like the Robins at the very least, like the original 5 Robins, including um the girl. But yeah, so for me, this is really just an extension of stuff that I this is for all intents and purposes my fluffy little fan fiction of the Batman extend. That's what this is. It's fluffy fan fiction of the Batman universe that DC has decided to publicly acknowledge as part of its own separate universe.
Yeah,
Um, and I
I think
love it.
it worked. Like I can see that it worked really well as that. Like there's nothing wrong. Like none of my complaints against the series are because the series isn't doing what it set out to do. And what the series set out to do is something I think that fans of Batman really will like longtime fans of Batman or fans of that extended universe.
Is getting to see characters who never met in canon interact with one another and not focus on horrific crime and fighting. You know, you're focusing very much on the actual social life of all of our main characters, including Bruce. And the thing is, as I was reading through them last night, I understand that I am a relatively open, emotional person, but I did cry 4 different times reading through the first 4 volumes. Not in the first volume, but there are actually some really, really poignant vignettes. And a lot of the little stories here have underlying lessons about like not all of them. They don't all have underlying lessons, but a lot of them do. You know, things about like communication and trust and openness and making time for yourself and so on. Like there's actually a fair amount of just it's almost like children's fables that teach you a lesson. Each time, a lot of the stories have something like that. And then they're interspersed by like fun little things. Like in one of the later volumes, there's like a snowball fight or like the cookie fight or something in the first volume. Yeah. So it's got that it can get you in the feels if you're not prepared for, you know, someone to have this absolutely heart-wrenching interaction with another character. I mean, because we're not continuing it, and I know Nick Nack's probably not going to go read it on his own at any point, so I don't mind discussing further into it, you know, just to kind of communicate my thoughts and opinions because I am further into it at this point, and since we won't be returning to it, together, you know, there's a few people I know who are steeped deep enough in Batman lore that they might enjoy this. But I don't know if that's not something I'd necessarily want to like bring them on the channel for per se
Well,
because
I don't know if it's the same people, but is this a good time to plug the fact that this is not your only podcast?
it's not. As a matter of fact, I I am on another podcast. It's run by someone else. Um, I'll see if I can like maybe link it below or something when this comes out. I started as a guest there, but I've kind of become one of the main members because we don't record that frequently. But we're reading through a bunch of old original Marvel comics at the moment, but they are all quite well versed in the DC comics as well. So we're currently reading through the Runaways, the 2005 series. Um, so I will say part of the reason why I've gotten more into comics and done a lot more reading is because I've been interacting with comics on a wider scale. And not necessarily interacting with comics of just characters that I know. I had no clue who the Runaways were when we started doing that. It's still they're not incredibly well known and popular characters, but
Didn't they
uh
have a TV show?
I think that's separate. Um, I don't think that follows the actual like the Marvel group, The Runaways. I think it was just a Marvel show titled something similar. But I'm not sure. I could be wrong. I do not
It
know.
was one of the older and like it was one of those like Agents of Shield era shows. I'm pretty sure
I highly doubt it then.
it was
Well,
much.
yeah, but the premise of The Runaways is that the Avengers bust their family, like all of their parents who are part of this like major crime syndicate on the West Coast, and then they take over their parents' old base.
Yeah, yeah, they had a TV show.
But is it The Runaways?
Yeah, Marvel's The Runaways. It's a
Oh
Hulu
my
thing.
fucking God. Okay. I did not realize that. Oh my God.
I remember it because I was actually steeped in like the old MCU TV universe with like Agents of Shield, the Netflix stuff, the Runaways. I didn't watch the Runaways, but I knew of it on the periphery.
Oh God, they really did. Holy shit.
Now I'm not preaching to its quality. I didn't watch it. I don't remember what the general consensus was around it, but they did have a Marvel TV MCU show. They
Oof,
are in the MCU, or at least an MCU adjacent variant timeline.
I was not aware of that. Anyways, but yeah, so that would be some of the people I know who might be able to discuss this series more properly in depth. Bakage as well is pretty well steeped into DC lore specifically. But Bakage is a huge Superman fan. Like he falls more along the line of some of the other characters like Superman and stuff. Although we have had discussions about the different Robins. So if anyone, that might be, someone I might ask about the series because I think it would be interesting. Um I but I do think that this series, ironically, I actually think this series might be more readable if you had no experience with Batman lore, than if you have like minimal. Because if you have minimal, you know which characters you're missing. If you have zero experience, you're out for everyone. And they do little like tiny introductions. So if you don't really care about the backstory and you just want a really light, fluffy, feel-good series, about like a family of vigilantes slash superheroes, this is a great choice. Like this is an
Okay,
absolutely fantastic choice.
here's the problem here on that idea. There's not very many people that know nothing about the Batman mythos.
That is true. That is
And
Batman is iconic.
I do think even under that context, because this is a pre-established set of characters, it's not taking as much time as other slice of life series might in the introduction of its characters, because why would you? Um, which isn't a knock against the series, it's the kind of series this is written to be.
Hmm.
But I don't know how well this works with everyone. It might work with some people, but I do think the characters aren't nearly as distinct early
Well,
on as you probably get out of other slice of life series.
on that note, I do want to bring up one other thing about this webtoon extended universe. So, the other one that's directly connected to this, Red Hood and the Outlaws, right? Vixen is tangentially connected, but Red Hood and the Outlaws is generally disliked
Hmm.
by most people, and specifically people who are fans of Jason Todd. They think it's very out of character. A lot of people don't believe that it's incredibly well written, and it's not as people are not as big of a fan of that series as they are this one. And Red Hood and the Outlaws is Red Hood starting his own little vigilante group, right? That's the plot of that. And then even with Bat Fam, the one thing that I've heard people complain about online most commonly with it in fandom spaces is that because this is completely out of continuity, but it's being released on a platform that has people who aren't typically comics fans, right? So a lot of people who aren't traditionally fans of comic books are able to read this, see it, and access it because it's on Webtoon, right? And so there's a lot of people coming into the fandom space who think that this portrayal of these characters' personalities is correct to the way that they're written. And that is not necessarily true. The authors here are taking a lot of liberties to have all these characters show up in the same continuity and interacting with one another. This is not a faithful portrayal of any of their characters to any of the traditional comic series that they are in. Not really. It is faithful about their abilities, who they are, their origins, and that sort of thing, but it takes a lot of liberties with the personalities and how they interact with one another to make it all fit. So I love it. I also have the context that these characters do not interact like this in their original runs if they ever meet, and half of them never meet. Um, a lot of people in fandom spaces are mad because, like, in places like AO3, this characterization has taken over the fandom on AO3, and there are more and more fics that are kind of doing this sort of like happy family. Everyone's just a little bit angsty and less hardcore Batman hitting fan fiction. And I know that's also found its way over a little bit to fan art as well. This is pretty influential in the way that the characters are often drawn and represented. Although it doesn't stray too much from their, I mean, each of them is essentially wearing their normal costumes and stuff. But yes, there is a section of people who don't love this because it is completely out of universe, and therefore the characters have a lot of moments that are out of character to the way that they would perceive those characters based on the comic books that they've read them in. Like Jason Todd, A Death in the Family, is not really reflected in this Bat Fam run. Like they've taken a lot of liberties with Jason's character as Red Hood to kind of have him in this sibling and child role here. I don't know if that was super evident, but this is not one big happy family in the comics.
I mean, I don't usually you don't see this many of the characters at with Bruce at once. The only other time I think I've ever seen this many of them present in the current Batman story or in a Batman story is the fucking Harley Quinn show. So
Yeah,
you can a lot of this is being dreamed up for this specific universe.
yeah. However, I don't think that makes it bad. I think this is still
No,
a great series, and I would highly recommend you to go check it out. Um, but yeah, there's not much more to discuss about it because it is a series of like little short stories and vignette. It is slice of life. This is entirely slice of life. That's what the series is. So it would be sort of counterproductive to actually thinking about the story to just sit down and cover it like, oh, they talked about this. Oh, they talked about this. Oh, Duke moved into the family mansion. Oh, like Damien and Dick went out to like do something.
that's also kind of why I was like, I think I only need to read one volume of this, even though I don't hate it. It's just like, even though it was just not quite my thing, but knowing that it's slice of life, my mind was like, okay, so it's this is what this series is. This is what it's trying to be, and it's not going to really change as we read more volumes. It's going to be more of this, which is good. It's good stuff, but if I'm already not necessarily feeling it, there's not much reason to really drag it out and potentially risk really souring my opinion on it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair. Um, So now we really don't know what's next. I don't know what's next. You don't know what's next. And you guys will get to see what's next. Like, comment, subscribe.
Bye.